The woman slipped from the arms of the security officer before he could react. She lunged for the other woman's ponytail, yanking it back. In a quick, smooth motion, she pulled a knife from a hidden pocket and drove it down toward the other woman's face. The scream that followed didn't sound human. This isn't a movie. This actually happened, and it's just one glimpse into the brutal, chaotic nightmare of what it's really like to be an escort. When you think of escorts, you're probably thinking of the glamorous life seen in some TV shows and movies. Beautiful women jet-setting around the world to distant locations to court wealthy men. But that's only a tiny portion of what the world of escorting is really about. And today we're going to introduce you to the secret world of sex for sale, from the heights of Dubai's finest luxury hotels to the streets of your own hometown. We'll tell you all about what car play is, why you as the John might be in far more danger than you think, and how violence isn't the exception in the escort world, it's part of the job. But first, we're headed to the gleaming towers of Dubai, where women, and quite a few men, earn more money in a single weekend than most of us earn in years. Though behind the glamour lies a seedy underbelly of violence and exploitation. The first woman we met was Samantha, not her real name, an escort based out of Southern California, whose clients included movie stars and royalty. When you see a glamorous escort in a TV show or a movie, it's Samantha's life they're imitating. She doesn't walk the streets, she's never had to. There's no website, and you won't find Samantha's services listed anywhere like the hundreds of thousands of other escorts, because Samantha is exclusive. Her entire business model is word of mouth. Her clients are her marketing, and she only accepts a very limited number. Samantha is exclusive in every way you can imagine. You might think that makes her elitist or stuck up, but it is quite the opposite. She is friendly, warm, and fun. And that's the secret to her success. Samantha isn't the most breathtaking woman you've ever seen, and that might surprise you. In fact, at first glance, she's almost ordinary. That's not to say she's unattractive, far from it. But she's not the flawless hourglass figure Aphrodite that you might expect from an escort whose clients rank among the most elite in the world. She doesn't even dress the part most of the time. No flashy designer brands or handbags, no flashy jewelry, only when she goes on dates. Instead, Samantha could be mistaken for the average girl next door in any small town in America. But that is the secret to her success, because what Samantha is charismatic. She's fun. She has a great attitude. She can make anyone feel comfortable. She is charming without trying, and when you meet her, she immediately puts you at ease. And that is worth big bucks in Samantha's world, even bigger bucks than the physical beauty. Any doubts I had about her credibility vanished one day when we were in the car. We were cruising through the city when her phone rang. She put it on speaker and gave me a quick signal to be quiet. The voice on the other end had a thick Middle Eastern accent. The caller identified himself, and she knew exactly who he was. He was the personal physician to a Saudi Arabian prince who will remain unidentified. The doctor wished to schedule a visit from Samantha, and that is exactly how he worded it. They discussed dates, logistics, and before ending the call, the doctor told her that he'd be emailing over details from a medical lab in Los Angeles where she would undergo a full STD screening. She said that this is standard procedure, though it was only the very elite clients like princes who scheduled her testing directly. Some people never asked. Those that did, she would simply inform them of her latest test results. And that's the way the escort world operates at such a high level. It might sound insane for a profession mired in illegality and shady morality, but integrity is critical. If you lie about an STD test result and infect a client, your reputation is destroyed. You will never work at that level again. These men and some women weren't just paying for sex or companionship, they were paying for the entire experience to be worry-free and hassle-free. And it's the escort's responsibility to guarantee that. What's really surprising is that sex is the least used service that Samantha offered. But more on that in a second. The call ended with Samantha confirming receipt of her email, and that was it. She said that after the doctor got the lab results, he would schedule a hard date for her to fly out. There was no talk of money, there never was. There had only ever been one discussion about money the first time that she'd done this, and she quickly learned to never bring it up again. And how much she earns without even asking or setting a price is pretty eye-watering. I asked Samantha what these dates were typically like. She said it depended on if it was local or long distance. She saw some A-list celebrities around the SoCal area locally, and typically those dates would last a day, maybe two. Typically, she would make herself available in the early afternoon, then spend all night with the client, usually spending the night there and then seeing herself out in the morning. One of her clients, though, a prominent A-list actor who is now in the tail end of his career, well, he preferred Samantha's visits to be open-ended, no time limits, just stay as long as you would like. He often had 3 or 4 women around like that, all just to keep him company. She told me that she liked him, he was a very nice man, but a very tormented figure who hated to be alone. Sex was involved in these visits, but much of the time would be spent just hanging around. She did some drugs, those that she called the softer drugs, like weed, mushrooms, acid, occasionally cocaine, but she only did them with the people she trusted. The one thing she was adamant about was never placing herself in danger. On that note, I asked her about danger, because as you'll soon see, for a regular escort, it's the most dangerous job you could have. She told me that the only concern she ever had was with some clients who might overconsume alcohol or drugs and then do something stupid. But this was rare. At that level, reputations matter, and if a client gets a bad reputation, it quickly spreads until they're basically blacklisted. Again, I was very impressed with how self-regulating and, well, safe the whole thing was. A local visit will earn her a few $1,000s a day, but an overseas trip will earn tens of thousands of dollars. These trips come with perks, but also risks. Some girls are victims of violence and degrading abuse, but Samantha is one of the lucky ones. One trip she told me she flew out to Dubai for the weekend. She was seeing the same lower-ranking member of the Saudi royal family. When she got there, she was chauffeured straight to the hotel, where she had her own suite, one of the most expensive rooms in the entire city. The room was fully paid for, and she was free to charge anything that she wanted to the room: room service, massages, or beauty treatments at the spa, even things from the numerous designer stores in the hotel. Her client was busy throughout the weekend at an oil industry conference, and so he only had time to see her in the late evening. She was given a credit card with no limit and encouraged to use a personal driver to go shopping in the city. A no-limit credit card in Dubai? That could get expensive quick, I told her. She nodded, but she told me that's where the whole trust thing comes in. She bought some nice things for herself and her friends and family, but had the class not to abuse the privilege. And that is why whenever she visits, she gets another no-limit credit card to use as she wants. So, what's the most she's ever spent, I asked her, and she said that she bought something special for her mom, and it came out to $10,000. That sounds like a massive figure, but as she pointed out, these people don't have money, they are money. $10,000 is a drop in the ocean for them, which explains why she would earn between $20 and $50 per visit on top of all that, depending on if it was a weekend visit or a 4-day stay. It was never longer than that, though. So what did a typical visit include? Well, much to my surprise, not much sex. Samantha told me that 4 out of 5 visits, she just went to dinner and spent time in the evenings with this specific client. He was looking to relax and unwind. If she had to guess, she said that she'd only ever had sex 50% of the times that she'd been booked. It's easy to see why Samantha is so successful, but Dubai isn't always glitz and glamour, it can be dangerous. For every Samantha, there's another girl who is used and cast aside, often with no way to escape the city. It's something Samantha is aware of. She knows the risks that come with the job. She knows things could go wrong quickly. Next Contact was a significant step down the ladder toward the murkiest levels of sex for hire, including where I'd seen one woman attack another with a knife right in front of me. My next contact was Jessica. Again, not her real name. It isn't even the name that she uses with her clients. While Samantha operated in a world built on honesty and trust, where she never hid her name or identity, Jessica lived in a very different reality, a world where she had to protect herself with layers of anonymity. Jessica is more of what I would expect from a top-tier escort. She's in her early 30s, extremely fit, and an absolute blonde bombshell. Like Samantha, she has a pleasant personality, but she definitely lacks that natural charm and charisma. With Jessica, you could tell it was a role that she was playing. Jessica is what I'd call a high-tier escort. She charges $600 an hour with a minimum of 2 hours. She advertises her services online on various websites, some more professional than others. There are some websites that require screening for potential escorts, and they exist to make sure that clients are protected from bait and switch or other scams. That's right, if you think hiring an escort is as easy as an exchange of money, well, think again. The world of escorting is dangerous, not just for the escorts, but for the clients as well. An infamous scam is the bait and switch. If you've ever visited Las Vegas and found those cards advertising in-call stripper services or massages, well, you'd better not expect the girl on the card or the flyer to be the one that shows up. The same thing with online services. Very rarely are you going to be getting who you think you're paying for. One way to protect yourself is to shell out for a top-tier provider like Jessica. That's the name that they prefer at this level of the game, by the way, provider. You don't call them escorts or anything else, at risk of being blacklisted. A top-tier provider like Jessica is going to cost you significantly, but that price comes with guarantees. For one, what you see is what you get. Many escorts will use either fake, heavily photoshopped, or old images in their ads. What you see is what you would have gotten 10 years ago and 2 babies ago. But Jessica keeps her website current, constantly updating with new photos, video material, and, well, maybe a little Photoshop. Unlike many women in the game, Jessica doesn't run an OnlyFans alongside her services as a provider. This is because Jessica isn't a full-time sex worker. Escorting is what she does to supplement her lifestyle. It's not a career for her. Jessica has a very real, very legitimate life that she keeps as a secret from her clients, as she keeps her escorting from her family and friends. To protect her identity, she blurs her photos, which she admits hurts her bottom line, especially because she charges so much. Typically, at her rates, women don't blur their photos. This is a lifestyle they've committed to. At Jessica's level, it's also very common for porn stars to supplement their pornography career with escorting. Many porn stars also offer escort services, and many OnlyFans models do the same despite not advertising it. Matter of fact, Samantha had told me that she knew of girls recruited into the lifestyle through very wealthy men messaging them directly on OnlyFans. To spend an evening or even a full weekend with Jessica, you have to know the rules. First, there is absolutely no negotiation over the price. Any attempt to negotiate will immediately end all communication. Jessica showed me her phone's block list, and it was extremely long. Any misstep at Jessica's level means you are cut off for her own protection. So, when you contact someone like Jessica, you'll usually do it either via email or a text message. Jessica, like many providers at this level, will put out ads on websites online, either with a phone number or a text or a website with an email link. Calls are heavily discouraged, and these phone numbers are always Google Voice numbers. When you reach out, there are strict rules for how to do so. An escort's ad will typically include instructions, such as text or email only, and you should follow them or risk getting blacklisted. It's a good idea to mention where you found their information, whether it was through a website, a referral, or another source. Then clearly state whether you're requesting an in-call or an out-call, and include either a specific date or a range of dates you're available. A provider will typically have a screening process. This is information they'll request from you in order to verify your identity. It means giving up personal info, which comes with its own risk. But ultimately, it's for the safety of the provider themselves. For anyone worried about blackmail, it may happen. This is a risky enterprise after all, but generally a provider will make more money by being reliable and reputable than by blackmailing. The last thing a legitimate provider wants is to get a bad reputation. So, what happens when you've cleared the screening process and set a date? Jessica has a routine. On her website is a section dedicated to expected etiquette, with a disclaimer on cleanliness. She expects a client to show up clean and freshly washed, but will sometimes require a shower on arrival from clients. Different providers have different ways of handling payment, which at this level is called a donation. You're not hiring Jessica for sex. You're giving her a donation for time spent between 2 consenting adults. There is no exchange of money for any services here. You just happen to be a nice guy who doesn't mind giving $1,200 to a pretty woman just to hang out. This is obviously to protect from law enforcement. Jessica expects the donation to be brought in an envelope and laid out upon arrival, though increasingly she's turning to cryptocurrency instead. It's just more convenient and less awkward, she says, plus not many people feel comfortable carrying that much money around these days. Each provider is different, but Jessica demands that 50% of the payment be put down as a deposit. This is to protect her time. Too many clients get cold feet and back out, which costs her money, as she has dedicated her schedule to the client already. Matter of fact, taking a deposit is a sign of a professional. I asked Jessica if she'd ever had any bad dates, and she said that she had 1 or 2 where she had to threaten to call the police. But at her rates, men tend to be professional and polite, and the escort community at this level is pretty tight-knit. The internet has really helped with that thanks to websites like Reddit, where escorts can share their experiences with clients. She wasn't living the gilded life trips to Dubai, but she did pretty well for herself. It's a steep drop-off from Jessica to the world of the average escort. Below Jessica's level, you have a mix of streetwalkers and budget escorts. You can typically find these girls at strip clubs where they supplement nightly tips with sex. Sometimes it happens in the club itself, though high-end strip clubs are extremely wary of this behavior and they'll immediately fire any girls that engage in it. The clubs know they are targets for law enforcement and they can't afford any violations. Cheap, low-end strip clubs, however, are a different world. Here you can usually find sex workers willing to engage in sex inside of the club itself, or outside in what's known as car dates. These car dates can also be lined up with budget escorts online or even girls on the street. They require nothing more than picking up a girl at an appointed time, or in the case of a strip club, leaving for the parking lot and driving somewhere dark for sex. It's obviously extremely dangerous for both the client and the escort. The dangers to the escorts are pretty obvious, but clients are at a serious risk as well at these lower levels of the sex trade. I met several girls who worked in Las Vegas, both online and offline, and who filled me in on the numerous scams and tricks that they and other girls happily pulled on their clients. One popular scam is to have girls post ads online offering hourly or even half-hourly services at low rates, always in calls at a motel. When the client shows up, he is robbed and sent on his way. A group may do this 2 or 3 times in a night and then move on to evade law enforcement, though the odds of someone self-reporting to hire a prostitute for sex to the police are extremely low. The general rule of thumb is anything under $200 you are taking a serious risk on. Girls who work near popular tourist hotels, however, like all over the Strip in Vegas, will pull different scams. In Vegas, a popular one is to go to a hotel room with a client and then demand they take a quick shower. While they're in the shower, the girl will let her friend into the room and the two will hurry up and steal everything they can and run away. As usual, most men will be too embarrassed to report the theft. After I left the military, one of my first jobs while waiting to go to school was to work security on the Vegas Strip, and I encountered this scam frequently. It's also where I saw how brutal the life of escorting can be for the women and some of the men who engage in it. In a place like the Strip, girls who physically go on the prowl rather than relying on internet services will hit up the major casinos. They'll hover around the bars waiting to be approached by men or approach men directly after observing them for a while. They're looking for guys who seem to be alone or separated from their friends. There's little fear of the law, and they will be quick to make it clear that they are a sex worker, plainly asking if the potential client is interested or not. They're quick to move on if there's no interest. In a place like a big Las Vegas casino with a constant stream of guests and visitors, someone always is. The women will often carry means of self-protection, from stun guns to knives, even real guns. At the budget sex level, life is very dangerous, and there are few of the protections that people like Samantha and Jessica enjoy. Here, reputations don't matter because clients go as fast as they come. It's new faces all the time, no trust, and a lot of suspicion. But for all the danger that sex workers face, sometimes the biggest danger is from each other. Girls like Samantha and Jessica don't have a turf. They are exclusive and in demand. However, at the very low end of the field, sex workers will often stake out turfs that they and a group of friends will work together. And intrusions onto that turf, let alone moving in on someone else's client, can end violently. I got a taste of that shortly after starting my security job on the Strip. We received a call of several women fighting in front of the casino cashier. When we got there, it was clear that the women were all sex workers. They were fighting because 2 of them had tried to move in on a client that the other 2 had already reeled in, pulling him away from the game table just moments earlier, convincing him to cash in his chips and head upstairs. The fight was shockingly violent, and there were already tufts of pulled hair and even some blood on the ground. I managed to wrestle away one of the women, and my friend grabbed another, and then we all had them separated when suddenly one of the girls wiggled out of the grip of another officer, lunged toward one of the women who tried to steal their client, and in a split second she had plunged a blade into the other woman's face. It was clear that drugs had been involved, and they are extremely common at this level, with favorites being meth, cocaine, and a variety of uppers. Most women will then chase sleep in the morning with heavy doses of downers. Ultimately, though, that was nothing out of the ordinary in the world of sex work at this level. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for, and that knife could have just as well ended up in the client. We had those calls as well the year I worked there. It would be unfair to stereotype sex workers, though. Truth is, I've met people at both ends of the spectrum in sex work who were wonderful, legitimately warm people, and I met those who were cold and manipulative. What's important to keep in mind is that a lot of the latter were made that way by their experiences in sex work, by the way that the men treated them. You could say, well, you knew the deal when you signed up, but that would be excusing the men who hired these women and their behavior. It doesn't matter if someone's charging money for sex or not, they're just as worthy of respect as anyone else. And before passing judgment, it's always important to keep in mind just how many women and men are forced into this line of work because of a lack of opportunity. If you've had the privilege of options in your life, be thankful for it and try to withhold judgment from those who don't have as many or any, like the women trafficked into sex work. I was unable to make any contacts in that community, and the few openings I had, I decided not to pursue for fear of my own safety. But the story isn't secret. These are the sex workers whose ads you see online, typically advertised as belonging to agencies who happen to have a roster of exclusively foreign women. These women are 9 out of 10 times all Asian. These agencies will set themselves up in entire apartment blocks. In Los Angeles, there's an infamous part of Koreatown where the entire apartment blocks are owned and operated by gangs who organize sex work out of them. You book an appointment online or over text and are told an address to show up to and that there's a girl waiting inside. Most of the time, it's the right girl. These agencies are also concerned with their reputation, but she is unlikely to speak any English. She's also unlikely to see anything more than maybe 30% of what you end up paying, with most of the money going to the gang that runs the operation. These girls are either directly trafficked here from overseas and kept in the gang in sex slavery, or as was the case for many Korean women in Los Angeles, they hire themselves out to these groups who, in exchange for paying their way into the US and setting them up with a place to stay, have to engage in sex work to repay their debt. These debts are massively inflated, and a girl might end up working several years to pay them off. With the explosion in sex trafficking, ethically engaging in seeking the services of a provider becomes ever more difficult, which is why women like Samantha and Jessica continue to be popular as independent providers. But it's not without inherent risk. The sad reality is for every successful escort, there is another trapped in a brutal cycle of coercion, violence, and psychological trauma, beaten, broken, and denied any choice at all. Now go check out what happens to your body while you're having sex, or click this video instead.